like it like that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to John Dudley Speaks. I'm your host, definitely not Maluma. Hailing from Medellin, Colombia, J Balvin performed at clubs in his late teens, eventually partnering with David Rivera Mazo, who aided J Balvin in levitating his brand in the early 2000s, leading to his 2004 single Panas. By the time 2009 rolled around, he had signed to EMI, and mixtape releases from then up until 2012 left his footprint on the growing mainstream reggaeton scene. 6am and I Vamos were Latin pop hits in 2014, gaining him a spot on the 2015 Furious 7 soundtrack with a remix of the latter. Energia came in summer 2016, and the collaborations from Juanes to Pharrell Williams demonstrated his burgeoning mass appeal across multiple musical markets at the time, leading to a tour with French Montana, Bad Bunny, and Steve Aoki. Everything changed for J Balvin when he finally hit it big on Mi Gente, which smashed the charts right when reggaeton hit a fever pitch. Beyonce remixed the track and it hit number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, giving J Balvin the biggest hit of his career so far. After a feature on Cardi B's I Like It, the release of Vibras, the release of Oasis with Bad Bunny, and the release of Colores in 2020, he capped off his extremely successful run with 2021's Jose, my personal favorite album of his so far due to its wild assortment of styles and variations of the reggaeton genre. And now with Rayo, his first in a few years, J Balvin keeps evolving his take on this style of music, even if it does lack a lot more substance than usual.
Rayo.
The major drawback of this album musically is that, unlike its predecessors, I found the production to have a strong focus on mid-tempo jam after mid-tempo jam, and honestly I believe that's below J Balvin's level of skill. I mean, Jose had a collaboration with Skrillex that synthesized dubstep and reggaeton, and Colores had moments that were better suited for a rap record like on Blanco. So it was confusing to me that Rayo felt like it was stuck with the same sonics for the entire runtime. The synthetic elements of Cosas de Locos are compressed in the mix. Polvo de tu Vida has a fun punch, but it's a track that J Balvin has pulled off much better in the past, and songs like Bajo y Bateria, Lobo, Gato, and Solido aren't particularly lackluster, but none of the production flourishes are attention-grabbing enough to keep us invested. Conversely, I could have used way more of the industrial-tinged bass line of Doblexxó, which is incredibly infectious, and Tres Noches perfects J Balvin's romantic flair with chilled-out, atmospheric, and restrained instrumentation and mixing that's absolutely gorgeous. The club-ready Latin pop of Origami and Gaga are also welcome twists on the musical formula here, but they're just sat beside so many repeats of the same types of tracks that the overall production aesthetic turns out to be muddled and monotonous. Lyricism has not always been the main highlight of J Balvin's output, and it's not trying to be because the focus is always on the vibe, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't released heartfelt tracks and pitch-perfect bangers that understand the power of arrangement. And on this project, I feel like he loses that a bit. The themes surrounding this project revolve around his usual ideas of love and relationships and sex, and that's worked before, for sure, but much of this feels stale upon arrival. Cosas de Locos is pretty flat in my opinion from a storytelling perspective, teasing a connection with the woman named in the track, but not going far enough to establish why J Balvin found the relationship to be so important. Polvo de tu Vida goes for the club visuals in its lyricism, but actually I think J Balvin pulls it off way better in Doblexxó, rendering that track redundant and poor in comparison. And the whole let loose vibe on this album feels completely tired, giving the impression that on tracks like Bajo y Bateria that J Balvin doesn't have much to say. However, there are some bright spots with Tres Noches, where you actually sense the vulnerability embedded into these verses, giving us a One More Night Phil Collins heartbreak anthem in the modern age that kind of works. So while the club aspect didn't really hit in the way that it has in the past, J Balvin does make up for it, just not as much as we'd hope. To say that J Balvin's going through the motions on this project would be an understatement, because he just doesn't really engage in a meaningful way that sticks. The opening run of tracks starts this thing off on a mellow note, with Cosas de Locos and Polvo de tu Vida failing to connect, mainly due to J Balvin's lack of energy. SWAT and Doblexxó sway him back into the right direction, as he's far more captivating on these tracks, as well as Tres Noches, where the heartache really emanates from his voice, and Gaga, where J Balvin's silky smooth vocals lend us a Weeknd-esque hook that sparkles with the dance-driven instrumental. But while I feel like the features of the album dove into their verses head on, J Balvin doesn't meet their intensity, instead offsets it with too much of a chill vibe, leading to the tones having a mismatch. So by the completion of the project, he really can't gain back the effort that he was giving in the early third, so we're left with some of his most forgettable performances because of it. At 15 tracks and 47 minutes, this record does not coast by, leading to it being a bit of a slog in the midsection to the final leg. The first half of the record contains the best work here, of course, with Tres Noches, Doblexxó, and Gaga turning out to be solid hits. And on the back end, Origami is a fun gem amid the filler that it's sat beside. It's just the pacing of this album can be very exhausting very quickly, because like I said before, it's mid-tempo jam after mid-tempo jam. I'm reminded a bit of Drake's Views or Justin Timberlake's Man of the Woods, in that there's good material there, but it's overcrowded by a lack of self-censorship and self-editing that makes the project come together sloppily. So the end product suffers from it. This isn't a great album from J Balvin, and I think that he's way more capable of producing something better than this. It's a mild step down that misses the mark, so I'm hoping that whatever he comes back with next will switch things up. But hey, that's just my perspective. If you're a J Balvin fan, there's still a lot of good work to enjoy here, so make sure you get those spins in before the summer ends. Alright, that's all I got. Bye!